Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. Welcome to the last Coffee with Diver webinar of this series. This week's presenter is Ola Nyberg from Infotool Sweden in Stockholm. Ola is one of Infotool Sweden's directors and he will talk about the document management and data input functionality in DivePort. His presentation will take around 15 minutes and afterwards we take a couple of minutes to answer your questions. If you have a question, you can use the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. It's time to start the webinar, so grab your cup of coffee. Ola, take it away.
Thank you, Lieven, and welcome to this session. So today we're going to talk about what you can do with documents and input in DivePort. There are a number of input and documents and input portlets in DivePort, namely the document manager, the document viewer. You have the form portlet, the lookup manager, and the table editor. If you look at this from a historical point of view, what came first were the lookup manager and the document manager, and then came the table editor, the forms, and the document viewer. So we're going to look at this in the chronological order, and we're going to start with the lookup manager. The lookup manager portlet is used to modify lookup files on a Diveline server from DivePort. And most of you are probably familiar with the lookup files. They're used for data mapping and adding information based on a set of known dimension values. So a lookup manager requires an additional license. Here, let's look at a typical lookup file. It can be a tab separated file like this. For example, this one has airports and airport codes, but it would be nicer if we could edit it in DivePort. So let's take a look at the lookup manager. Here you see the same lookup file in the lookup manager. So here you can, sorry, I have to log on first, otherwise I don't get to see that. As a guest user, you can't edit them. There you go. We can edit the fields. We can add new rows using the plus sign. And you can even edit columns, add and remove columns. There's a quick look at the lookup manager. The next component to look at is the document manager. The document manager portlet is used to open and view documents, not add them. And in order to use Document Manager, you need a document repository on the Diveline server. So the documents must be added on the server side. And for this portlet, you don't need any special license. So we'll take a look at that portlet. Lookup Manager. Here is an example of a document manager portlet where you simply list the files in the repository on the server. You can download the file and look at it. There's the lookup manager, or sorry, the document manager. Now we go into the table editor portlet. The table editor can be used with either document libraries or input tables. Document libraries are used for files and input tables for data. And for these, a special license is required. So let's start with the document libraries. A basic DivePort license includes one single library called the Portal Media Library. And it contains images that you use in image portlets, for example. So if you upload an image to add to an image portlet, it is automatically added to the Portal Media Library. And there are two ways in which you can add documents in DivePort. You can do it in the table editor, or you can upload documents using click actions. And in order to use more document or media document libraries than the portal media one, you need an additional license. Both normal users and guest users can have access. So let's take a look at this one. Here's an example of a table editor displaying the contents of a document library. So you can see that you have some standard columns like file timestamp, size, path, etc. created by. You can also have custom columns like, for example, document description. You can add a document. Let's pick this one, for example. Okay, and then you are prompted for a document description, the custom attribute. You can download documents and so forth. You can also use a click action to add a document. And in this case, I've added a click action to the image above. And then you get exactly the same upload dialog that you got before. So there's a quick look at the document library in a table editor. Now we have reached the document viewer portlet. The document viewer is used to display documents or a single document from a document library that we just looked at. And this one also requires an additional license. So let's take a look at that one. Here's an example of a PDF displayed in a document viewer. You can zoom, you can unzoom, you can fit to page, etc. A nice way to display documents in DivePort. Okay, let's talk about input tables. The input tables, they are similar to the document libraries, but used for data. So they are used to store and retrieve row-oriented tabular data from DivePort. And when it comes to storage, you have two alternatives. You can either use the default file-based database in the DivePort web data directory, or you can use any ODBC SQL database management system. And in the case of input tables, you can manage data through either the table editor and click actions, just like we did for documents. But you can also use forms, form portlets. And for input tables, you can get access for both users and guest users in DivePort. Okay, let's look at input tables. Here's an example of an input table. And this input table is actually based on a survey that we will send you after this session. We hope you will all fill out that survey, obviously. And in this case, well, you can see we have some standard columns like the primary key, identity column, created by, created at, etc. But here we can see our custom fields like participant role, for example, where you can use a drop-down, participant territory, you can sort, etc. You have the ability to add a row. And when you add a row, you get automatically a form. And in this case, I've configured to use the default form defined by or generated by DivePort. So there's also always a default form which is created automatically for you. And here you can enter, for example, the participant role, territory, etc. You can also use a click action. I've added a click action to this button here. And here you can see that you get a different form. So you can also define manually designed forms if you would like to change the layout, which I've done here. And you can also link the table editor to quick views for filtering. for example. I just want to look at the Swedish responses. And finally, you can also use input in a form portlet directly in the DivePort page. And here we have also added a background image to the form. So this is the survey page that we will send you after this session. I'll also show you some administration pages for this survey, like participant role. You can add it here. Territory, which country, and source. So I would like to finish this session with a couple of demos of applications built using input tables and forms and other standard Diver components. We have an issue tracker and a sales budgeting application. So let's start with the issue tracker. Several of our customers have built issue tracking systems using DivePort's input technology. And this is an example. It's in Swedish, unfortunately, but you get the point. You can see that you have a list of issues here with a ticket number, description, type, assigned to, status, priority, and a priority indicator. You have a bunch of quick views, pick lists in this case for filtering. And actually this list here is a measure portlet that displays the issues to which a click action has been connected. So you can add a new issue this way, or you can open one. And here's a quick look at the sales budgeting application. Here you have a budgeting form, and here you can filter by debtor, product, etc. You can enter your budgeting data by simply clicking on a cell to edit the budgeting for a month of the year, for example. You have administration pages where you can manage your debtors, add new ones, new products, etc. And of course, you can have your nice dashboard created using Diver technology. So, a couple of demos. There you go. So in order to sum up, we have had a look at the lookup manager, the document manager, the document libraries, the input tables, the table editor, and the forms. So this was the last of 8 sessions, and thank you very much for participating. We hope you will take part in the survey that will be sent afterwards. So I'm handing back over to you, Lieven.
Yeah, thank you, Ola. Before we finish, we have a couple of questions, starting with Andrea.
Yes.
Would like to know what's the difference between the lookup manager and the table editor?
Yeah, well, the lookup manager can only manage files, lookup files, whereas the table editor can also be connected to a database, so you can manage your data in a table in database. And the table editor is also more advanced in the way that you can link fields to other tables. You can specify that fields must be unique, required, etc. And obviously you have the form input possibility for the tables as well. The lookup manager has the one advantage that the end user or the user in DivePort can add a new column to the lookup file.
Okay. Another question from Lars.
Yes.
How do you get quick views to work with the tables?
Yes, you have to create a script that creates either a model or a CBase or a tunnel script based on the table editor data. So you need either a marker or a quick view set in the background, which shows the possible alternatives.
Okay.
And then you simply connect them through the table editor properties.
Okay. Thank you, Ola. There are a couple of additional questions, but I will ask my colleagues to answer them after the webinar. That brings me to the end of this webinar. This was the last Coffee with Diver webinar of this series, but we have good news for you. We are planning to organize a second series of webinars in September. And we would like to make these webinars as relevant as possible. Therefore, we would like to ask you to fill in the survey that Ola already mentioned and let us know what topics interest you most. This survey opens automatically after you close this Zoom window, but we will also send you a link by email. So on behalf of Dimensional Insights European Partner Network, I would like to thank you very much for participating in such large numbers in our webinars. I also would like to wish you a very pleasant summer. Bye for now, and let's meet again in September at another Coffee with Diver webinar.